friends, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you haven't been here before. I'm Erin, and for today's video we are going to be reading some more Reddit Let's Not Meet stories. So first off, I'm going to go ahead and apologize if you can hear any lawnmowers or anything. It's a really nice day, it's the weekend, so people are doing their thing outside. I should probably be outside, but here I am making videos for you guys. Anyway, I've done a couple of these Reddit Let's Not Meet stories before. I'll have them linked at the end. I'll have one of those little iCard things for the playlist for them. If you don't know what Reddit Let's Not Meet is, it's essentially stories where people either have almost gotten abducted, kidnapped, just meet some really weird people in their crossing. And the thing about this whole Reddit subreddit is that I believe that the majority of these stories are true. Whereas like with Reddit No Sleep, some of those stories may be true, but the good portion of them are just people, you know, writing scary stories for people. Okay, so for this video I have 3 different stories that I found that I briefly have skimmed, but I have not read all the way through them, just so I can react with you guys as I read these stories. So jumping right into it, the first one that I'm going to be reading is called I Was Kidnapped by My Ex and I Think He Was Going to Kill Me. And this was written by the user Anon847482. And of course, as usual, I will have all the original posts linked down below if you would like to check them out on Reddit yourself. I previously posted this with a ton of detail about how I ended up with Oscar, but it was way too long and no one read it. I'm gonna try again with just the events surrounding the kidnapping. But just know that this is a sick, twisted man that I'd met online when I was 18 and ended up dating. He was jealous, controlling, vindictive, abusive in every possible way, and was filled with sadistic tendencies and rage. So, I had tried to leave Oscar many times. I wasn't happy. In fact, I was in a constant state of panic and was absolutely miserable in the relationship that had lasted just a year. Each attempt to leave him was met with threats to hurt me and my family, physically dragging me back, threatening to commit suicide, or constant stalking and harassment until I surrendered. Finally, I had enough, and I decided I wasn't going back no matter what he did. He called my job nonstop and got me into major trouble, and did the same at my house, prompting me to unplug the phone line. He texted me to say he promised he was going to kill himself if I didn't go back to him. Instead of caving in, I called his mom at work and told her. She got a hold of him and said I must have misunderstood because he was clearly fine. I felt I'd done all I could do and told him I'd call the police the next time he said something like that to have them go check on him. The next day I got a call on my cell from Oscar. I rejected it. He called again and I rejected it again. Then I heard the loud exhaust on his car outside while I looked down at my phone and saw him calling again. I let it go to voicemail while I peeked through the blinds to check to see if I had truly heard his car, as I had started to falsely hear it sometimes out of paranoia. But this time he was indeed in front of my house. My phone started ringing again, and wanting him to stop, I answered it. He told me to come outside. I don't want to see you, I said. Just come outside for a few minutes, please, Oscar said, making a huge effort to sound pleasant. I told you to stop calling me and you show up at my house. Why can't you respect my wishes, I asked, knowing that the question wouldn't be addressed. I just felt bad about how everything went down and wanted to give you something I made for you before you broke up with me. Just come out for a few minutes so I can apologize, and then I'll go away, and you'll never hear from me again, Oscar pleaded. I don't know. I don't trust you, I told him, looking at him sitting in the car through the living room window. I promise, he said, kind of convincingly. I drove all the way here to give you what I made and just have a proper goodbye. In hindsight, I should have called BS on all of that immediately, but I was young and still way too controlled by my need to not hurt other people's feelings. I felt bad that he had driven 40 minutes to my house with something he'd made for me to just refuse to come out. Fine, only for a few minutes, I stated firmly. And you promise you're not going to try to beg me back? He promised and I went outside. I opened the passenger side door and sat down in the seat, leaving the door wide open. He commented that I must think he's going to kidnap me, trying to pass it off like a joke. I told him I wanted the legroom. He had a bouquet of flowers and some cases of DVDs he'd burned for me of all the seasons of my favorite TV show. We talked for a minute when my cell phone rang. I shouldn't have picked it up, knowing it was a guy from my job, but I was an idiot. I answered it and talked to the guy for less than 30 seconds. Oscar could hear it was a man's voice. I could instantly tell when I saw his head snap to attention in my peripheral vision. Homegirl should have never gotten into this car. When I hung up, Oscar looked at me with fury in his eyes and asked some question about the caller that I can't even recall now. Before I could reply to whatever he had asked, he slammed on the accelerator and was flying down the street with my door still open. I instinctively pulled my legs into the vehicle and started screaming for him to stop. He didn't seem to even be hearing me. I tried to jump out when he slowed down at the intersections, and seeing this, he grabbed my clothes with his hands to hold me in and started making sharp left turns through the neighborhood to force my door to swing shut. Once this was accomplished, I tried to open the door again, and he kept hitting the automatic locks to stop me, and was constantly increasing his speed to ensure any leap from the car would be dangerous. By now, it was dark outside. He was speeding through my town, double the speed limit. I was hoping a police officer would see this and start tailing him and pull him over, but apparently he'd gone unseen. He reached the freeway and I started really panicking. He would be able to go even faster here and fast-track me to wherever he planned to take me. It took maybe 3 minutes to get to the freeway at the speed he was going, all of which I spent trying to get out of the vehicle. Once he was on the freeway, he was going over 100 miles an hour. I kept looking at the speedometer. It was dark outside, and that was much too fast to jump from a moving car on the freeway, with other cars driving at high speeds and unable to see me. I still had my phone, so I tried to dial 911. I pressed the numbers with my hand shoved down the side of the seat by my window away from Oscar, but he saw what I was doing and started swerving all over the road while trying to grab my phone. I still don't really know how he managed to get it away from me because every ounce of my being was trying to hold on. He took it, rolled down his window, and threw it out. Rolling his window back up, he flatly said, "If I can't have you, then no one will." That sentence made my heart sink. I felt like I was in a Lifetime movie. Oscar was possessed by his need to possess me, and I was trapped. This is when the grim reality started to really set in. He was out of control, and I was out of options. I started screaming for help and pounding on the windows, but Oscar had the tint on those windows so dark that I probably wouldn't have even been seen if it wasn't dark. I watched as the people in each car we passed remained blissfully unaware of the chaos going on in the car I was being kidnapped in. I was feeling very defeated, but was running through all the possibilities of how this could go over and over in my mind, trying to figure out how to survive. I decided to stop fighting and acting afraid because the only way I saw myself making it out of this alive was by feeding into Oscar's delusional state. I had no other weapons or means of escape at my disposal, so I decided on psychological warfare. Oscar had this friend named Jose that he had gotten exceedingly close to over the course of our relationship. After a time, it was revealed to me in confidence that Jose had fled from Puerto Rico, supposedly on the run for murder. I saw Oscar was taking the necessary freeway interchanges to get to Jose's place, and knew that even if his friend hadn't really been wanted for murder, he was the type of guy who would do anything for Oscar without moral restriction. Jose and I got along okay, but I knew he'd have no loyalty to me whatsoever. He was nice to me as long as I was an extension of Oscar. I had to act quickly. I proceeded to tell Oscar that I loved him and wished we could be together, but I didn't see how it could ever work when things like what he was doing right now proved that he never cared about what I wanted. I hadn't necessarily cited that as a reason for wanting out of the relationship before, as it was much more complex than that, but I was hoping it was enough to offer him hope in his state of desperation. I told him I had been considering giving him another chance when I saw the flowers and DVDs, but now that he was refusing to take me home when I asked him to, I was starting to second-guess things. Oscar got off the freeway on Jose's exit, and I started to formulate a plan for when the car stopped. I knew Jose had neighbors close by and decided I was going to run as fast as I could and scream at the top of my lungs. I was trying to keep Oscar's mind preoccupied in the meantime, though, so that he wouldn't think to call Jose and give him a heads up. They usually spoke to each other in Spanish, so I would have no idea what was even said. Oscar told me that he did care about what I wanted and asked if he still had a chance with me if he turned around right now. In an effort to not expose myself with an overly enthusiastic reply, I hesitated a bit and said I thought we could probably work it out and this would be a good place to start. Oscar looped around and got back on the freeway, headed in the opposite direction, back toward my house. The rest of the ride was tense because Oscar was normally so perceptive and I didn't want to reveal myself and end up back in the line of fire. I can't recall what was said on the commute back, but I opted to talk about regular everyday things I'd normally say to him in casual conversation. When we got back to my house, he let me open my door and didn't stop me from leaving. I could finally breathe. I got out, taking the flowers and DVDs with me, and waved to him before walking into my house. I walked straight to the garbage bin and threw it all in the trash and then collapsed on my couch, shaking violently, but ultimately so grateful to have made it home. The next day I went to the police station and filed a restraining order against him. Within a few years he would be jailed for other appalling crimes and sentenced to 60 years. Until I found that out, I never truly felt safe. He's definitely where he belongs. So psychopath I dated that kidnapped me and was likely going to murder me? Let's not meet again. That one was definitely a really creepy one. I would think if she knew that he was a little bit on the possessive side, she probably should have never gotten into the car. Which, I mean, obviously now she knows, but definitely a scary one. Okay, so the next one we're going to read is Creepy Guy at Costco Tries to Give Me a Drink. And this one is written by the user Hit That Shug Jug. Okay. Our story takes place not long ago, on Monday of this week. I was at a Costco in the US with my mom, and we had decided that after we picked up our groceries that we'd grab a bite to eat from the Costco's pizza place. My mom leaves to go to the bathroom, so I'm left all alone standing in the back of the pizza place. Now here's where things start to take a turn for the creepy. An older man, maybe in his 50s or 60s, calmly approaches me and says to me in a sweet tone, "Hey kid, you want a free drink?" and offers me an empty cup. Now, knowing that I was about to get in line to order some food and beverages, I politely declined his offer. His tone then changed. He spoke in a lower, more gravelly voice. "Kid, don't be dumb. It's a free drink." At this point, I decided to inspect the cup he's holding and noticed a shine around the edge of the cup. The rest of the cup was completely dry and untouched, so that seemed awfully suspicious. I again declined his offer, making him visibly upset as he begins to approach me. Thank God for my mom. She comes back in the nick of time and the old man backs away and altogether leaves the area. I never saw him again. I don't even want to think about what he may have put in that cup and why he wanted to offer it to a fairly small, mind you, 15-year-old girl. So creepy guy from Costco, let's not meet. That's definitely creepy. Sounds a little weird that somebody would be offering you an empty cup to begin with. I mean, do they really expect you to try to take a drink out of an empty cup? Sounds like you probably had a multitude of issues going on there. Okay, this last one caught my eye because as I was skimming through it, I noticed that the story is written from Fayetteville, North Carolina, which I used to kind of live. I don't even want to say I lived near Fayetteville because I lived in Raleigh, but I had been to Fayetteville quite a few times, and no offense to those who do live in Fayetteville or stationed there, but Fayetteville can be a pretty rough town. So I was definitely intrigued by this one, which is what made me pick it. This one is called Trying to Do My Laundry Got Way More Than I Bargained For, and it's written by Aesthetic Metal. This story takes place in Fayetteville, North Carolina, near Fort Bragg, North Carolina, where I went to college 4 years ago. Anyone who is familiar with the area knows that Fayetteville has a large population of homeless vets near the base, also known locally as Fayette-Nam. I had just turned 20 years old and had moved out of the house for college over 2 hours away. I had previously worked at a nursing home for 2 years, so I have a special place in my heart for the struggling elderly. My roommate, male, and I had moved into a little apartment near the college and bought a rinky-dink washer and dryer set off of Craigslist. Well, the washer didn't last a week until it went out, and we had to start using the laundromat. My roommate was busy with homework, so I offered to do his laundry for him if he would do mine next week, and he agreed. So I grabbed a bag with laundry accessories, my phone, school books, and about $15 in quarters, and our clothes in the dirty hamper, and left. The layout of the laundromat was, at the front of the store there were 2 rows of washers and then 2 rows of dryers near the back. Then dryers on the walls on the left-hand side near the front. There were 2 tables catty-corner to each other, one on the front left-hand side, one at the back right-hand side, and then chairs lining the left of the walls. At the laundromat, I threw all of our laundry into a machine and pulled out one of my books for school to start studying. I was sitting at the table closest to the exit towards the front. Out of the corner of my eye, I see a woman with a child sitting down in the chairs to the left, and I see an elderly man with a military hat standing in the middle of the aisle, getting frustrated with a machine. It was really hard to watch, and I felt obligated to help him. I grabbed my bag with all my laundry stuff to come to his aid and ask him if he would care for some help with the washer. He said yes, and I looked at the washer, and he had no soap and was missing a quarter in the slots. As I got closer, I could smell his very potent stench of body odor coming from his laundry. I offered him a Tide Pod and gave him a quarter. He thanked me and then walked back over to the front tables. I picked up my books and start reading, and he catches the corner of my eye again. He was taking all of his clothes off, overclothes, and putting them in the dryer. He was now in only a white undershirt, tank top, and his shorts. At this point, I'm realizing that this man is indeed homeless and might have a few screws loose, so I should be careful. I watch him walk to the other table near the back of the store and walk towards my table with a big trash bag and sits down on the other side of the table. I smile at him and he smiles back, showing that most of his teeth were missing and that his canines were very decayed. He starts to small talk with me until there was an awkward silence. I could tell he was really lonely and wanted to talk. So yet again, I feel so bad for him, I try to strike up a conversation. I ask him about his military hat, and he got a flash of pride in his eye and tells me that he was a veteran that fought in Vietnam and starts to tell me about all the things he used to do for the military. When he was finished telling me, I told him that my stepdad was a Korean vet and I had a lot of respect for those who served and thanked him for his service. He asked me how my stepdad was, and I told him he died from cancer when I was younger, but I loved him very much. He looks at me dead in the eye and tells me that he was sorry about my father, but I could call him Daddy any time, and then puts his hat on me. I start freaking out, thinking this man has lice, so I took it off relatively calmly and handed it back to him. I wasn't sure if he was trying to be funny or not, but I told him that he was making me very uncomfortable and I wanted to be left alone to my studies. He nodded and took his bag over to the other table. A few minutes passed and the lady and her kids that were sitting to the left leave, and just like clockwork, he comes over to sit with me again, this time without his bag. He came over and apologizes to me and explained that he didn't mean to be rude and gave me a bag of candy. I tried to decline it to tell him I have a dairy allergy. I do, but he refuses and puts it inside my bag of soaps. I say thank you and he nods and sits back down. I tried to ignore him and he started to make these noises like he's in pain to get my attention. Like maybe he was having a fibromyalgia flare-up or something. I asked him if he was okay and he said yes, I'm just getting old. I giggle and then he tells me, I'm sorry, but I have to tell you. You have the most beautiful red hair I've ever seen. You remind me of my girlfriend. I asked him to hold on and switch my clothes over to the dryer. So I ask him about his girlfriend when I return, and he tells me that she died of a heroin overdose 2 months ago. I tell him that I'm sorry. He then asks if I would be his girlfriend, and without a second thought, I then try and convince him that I'm underage and that would be highly inappropriate. I'm 4'11" and about 100 pounds, so I figure it would have been believable. He then tells me that he doesn't care and can keep a secret, then touches my hand that's on the table where he sat across from me. Shivers went up my spine and I told him, I'm sorry sir, but no, I have a boyfriend. I pulled my hand away to text my roommate to come help me now. At this point his gaze seems rather predatory and my heart is beating out of my chest. I put my book down inside my bag and start gathering things to get out. I'm trying to be slow enough to not alarm him or provoke unwanted behavior. I was wearing a tank top and sweatpants at the time, and he then comments that he can see my cleavage and that it looked nice, and proceeded to tell me what he'd like to do. I stopped acknowledging him and threw my bag into the bottom of the hamper, started walking to the dryer where my clothes were still sopping wet, and started shoveling them as fast as I could into the hamper. All during this time, he is telling me how he would take me to a hotel and do all these horribly graphic things to me if he had money, and that he had 60 years of experience in pleasuring women. I still am trying to ignore him and have almost gotten all of my clothes. He then either picks up underwear that had fallen on the floor in my scramble or had taken them from the hamper while I wasn't paying attention. The bright blue thong catches my eye, then I look at him. I look him dead in the eyes as he flicks his tongue through the space of his missing front teeth like a snake. He starts bringing my underwear to his face, which I snatch so fast it startles him. He starts hightailing it to his bag to the back of the mat, and I panic and head to the door with all my belongings. I have never seen an old man run so damn fast. He grabs his bag and runs towards me, asking for a ride to a nearby town if I would wait for him. He grabs my shoulder in my struggle to open my door, and then I scream loud, and I have some pipes on me. He freezes. I make it out the door and then to my car without hearing him behind me. My guess, he was looking around the parking lot and laundromat to make sure no one was around. I'm not sure. I wasn't paying attention. I threw my laundry in the back seat, and he starts walking out to my car. He arrives at it just as I was getting in and locking my doors, asking for a ride again, pulling on the door handles, begging and crying. I leave, having a total panic attack. I get home and wake up my roommate and just start bawling my eyes out. I tell him everything that happened and made him promise to me that he would go with me next time. I'm not sure why I didn't just leave without the laundry and then come back with my roommate. I'm not sure why I did those things that led to it. I guess it's hard to have a clear head in stressful situations. All I know is that I'm so glad that I made it out. Dear Mr. Vietnam Vet, I hope we never meet again. So as soon as I had seen that this story took place in Fayetteville, I had a feeling that this was probably what it was going to be about, because unfortunately this is pretty commonplace in Fayetteville. Well, luckily for her, she made it out, because that guy definitely sounded like a sick man. Alright, so like I said, those were the 3 stories I was going to read. What do you think? I think they're definitely creepy. Definitely not any kind of situation that I would want to be in. But that's it for this video, guys. If you liked it, please give me a big old thumbs up. If you want to see more videos like this one, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, and I'll catch you guys in my next video. Bye!